All right, guys. We're playing white against John Terra 34. Hopefully we get a chance to play another Danish. Let's see, d4. Come on, take my pawn. Hopefully we get... Come on, take my pawn. Get a chance. No, knight c6. They're not playing. They're not going for the Danish. Now, knight c6 is fine. I mean, that's not a terrible move. And I know that for a lot of beginners, there is a general temptation to do two things. The first is to trade when trades are possible. Thank you, Beastmaster. The second is to push pawns. The move d5 is super tempting here. It grabs a lot of space, but it's actually not as good as it looks because it closes down the center. I'll explain what that means after the game. 1 second. Like, what does that mean definitionally? But it basically means there's a lot of pawns that are clogging up the center. And with the white pieces, Muffkin's thing with the prime, what we want to try to do is open the center up as much as possible. When the center is open, there are more opportunities to attack. There's more opportunities for tactics. That shouldn't be surprising. So we're just going to go ahead and take the pawn. Now, there's a couple of options. Some of you might be thinking f4 is very tempting to chase away the knight. What would be the drawback of the move f4? Who can explain to me conceptually? Because isn't it good to chase away the knight and grab space in the center? It opens up the king, right? It allows these options like queen h4. f4 is not a bad move. It also makes it harder for us to develop this bishop actively. So instead of playing a move like this, let's just develop our pieces. What does that mean? What should we do here? And it's true that this knight on e5 is a good knight. It's centralized. So what can we do about it? So we can play knight c3. And I would start by playing knight c3. I would see what he does and then either go knight f3 because we're fine with a trade. Or maybe go bishop f4 to chase the knight. Right? See, that's what it means to develop flexibly. We're waiting for him to show how he wants to position. Okay, that tells us a lot. That's a pretty passive move. Now he can't develop his bishop. And now we can already develop a general plan of action. Okay? So we can play knight f3. And that's a perfectly good move. What other scheme of development can you guys propose? So, and I'm looking in particular for like a set of moves here that have an ultimate. Nice. Potato for president. You're the man. So you already need to start thinking about which way we want to castle. And because he's so passive, because trying to play aggressively with white, we're often going to be castling longside, castling long, which is, as I'll explain, more risky generally than castling short because the king is less protected, but it's also more conducive to attacking for several reasons, one of which is that black will usually castle short, and then you'll basically have carte blanche to just push all of your pawns without fear that your king is going to get more and more weak. So let's do that. Let's play bishop out to e3. Then we're going to play queen d2, and we're just going to castle long. We're going to see what happens. So so bishop g4 is a very common, it's slight mistake, because it allows us now to secure our e4 pawn with tempo. What am I talking about here? Z-term, thank you. Yeah, and f3 is a move that I know will cause some confusion, because didn't I just say that pushing the f-pawn causes weakness? Well, things have changed, and because we are so close to castling long, this move turns from a liability into a huge asset, because not only does it cover the e4 pawn, building a pawn chain, but potentially it helps repair g4, which is a way that we could start attacking on the king side. Okay, so c5 is a bad move for many reasons, one of which is that he's not developing a piece. Another reason, shades of the last game, is that the d5 square is now a very juicy outpost for the knight. But let's not do anything until we've castled. Castling is going to make it much easier to operate because we won't have to worry about our king. Now let's operate. What kinds of moves come to mind here? There's many possibilities. Now, if we were to play this by the book, if we were to do what I had set out to do when I castled long, we would not give this check. We would actually go g4. Let's attack on the king side using our pawns. Let's chase his pieces away. Watch what happens. Watch what happens. G4. Okay, well, that was pretty quick benefit. Knight takes G4. Now and only now, we've won a piece. Time for us to develop our bishop. Now, he's got to cover with his knight if he knows what's good. Oh, okay. This is going to get juicy, guys. What should we do? This is going to get juicy. Boom. Occupying the outpost. Okay, so this is where things get confusing for a lot of players. Because a lot of people I know start looking at this position. Where's the mate? Man, I can't find the mate. Maybe I give a check on f4 with a knight. It just steps back to e7. I mean, what do I do here? What you need to do is you need to think backward. You need to reverse engineer the mating position. And think about it this way. The king has no squares. You would agree with me on that. Bishop covers this. Knight covers this. So the bishop and the knight are essential to the mating mechanism. You don't want to move either of these pieces. Instead, you want to try to involve a third piece. If you involve a third piece and you give a check from anywhere, it's going to be mate. As long as it doesn't interfere with these two pieces. Good piece to involve in this event is a screwdriver piece like a knight. A piece that can sort of wiggle in around the edges and deliver quick checks. And so we're going to go, knight h3. He pre-moves knight takes e3. And that knight is heading to f4. That is checkmate. Now, black could have stopped this, actually, with a particularly nice defensive move. We would have still been completely winning. Let's analyze. So knight c6 is our opponent's move. Now, this transposes into what's called the Nimzovich defense. Save that name. I've talked about him in the 5-minute speedrun. Aaron Nimzovich. He's occupying prime position in our dramatis personae. He's pretty significant character in the development of chess. This is called the Nimzovich defense. It's pretty obscure, but it's not that bad, and we basically transpose. Now, I could go knight f3. This would be the scotch. The scotch usually arises via this move order, so it's a transposition. And another word you'll often hear GMs throw around, transposition. That just means a position that has been reached. Transposition, right? It's been reached through a different move order. So this position can be reached through the move order. We reached it right here, or it can be reached through the move order knight f3, knight c6, and d4. But to transpose means to reach a position through a different move order. Does that make sense? So just to clear up any confusion. Not very good at defining terms, but if it's confusing, just please don't hesitate to ask me to clarify. Now, the scotch is a very good opening. It's an A-tier opening. I played the scotch all the way until I was about 1700. It is one of the openings that I recommend for players in the 1300-1400 range because it forces you to get a good sense of how to develop your pieces. All right, so this move d5 is very tempting, but it closes down the center. And even though it forces black to retreat, the bottom line is that when the center is closed and the center is clogged up, that's not good or bad inherently, but it is much harder to attack. And that should just make sense on its face. You don't need to know anything about chess to understand the concept that when the area is wide open, you can involve more pieces into that area. It's not occupied by pawns, right? So that's why we open up the center and we develop our knight. And now we play bishop e3. So we're preparing to castle queenside. There's many ways to play this position. And bishop g4 is a classic mistake because black sees that he's attacking our queen. I think, well, that's a good square for the bishop. But if you look one step further, we go f3, a move that we wanted to play anyway, and now we play with tempo. Bishop h5, queen d2, we castle, and now the move g4. So bishop e5 check is not quite as good as it looks. Why not? What should black do in the event of bishop e5? And by the way, this is what he should have done here as well. It's just that he's already given up a piece. So he definitely shouldn't bring the king up. Remember that there are three ways to deal with a check. Hammer this into your mind. You can take the piece that's delivering the check. Sometimes, not here. You can move your king, or you can block the check. And that third thing is what's most often missed. Move like knight c6. Easy to miss because a lot of people are conditioned to move the king when you're in check. Okay, so those checklist, that checklist can really help you if you're desperate. I know it sounds simple. So we had a question about why I played bishop b3, not bishop f4. Bishop f4 would be fine, although I'm not really threatening to take the knight. I'm just sort of staring at a knight that is defended. And I'm clogging up the f-pawn's path. Maybe later I want to play f4, and I want to reserve that right, if that makes sense. The checklist. Oh, that was an unintentional one. Okay, so we go g4. Now, this is what I would call a pawn storm. No, what I would call it's called a pawn storm. Pawn storm is the sustained movement of pawns. Oh my God, somebody just gave me a diamond membership gift. My Alchemist, thank you. That's very sweet. I really, really appreciate it. So I guess we're diamond members now. Yeah. Thank you. And I'll alert chess.com as to this account tomorrow. Now, pawn storms are conducted for several reasons. Okay. The classic reason is to destroy, or at least to damage, the pawn cover around your opponent's king. That is the sort of stereotypical pawn storm, right? That often happens in the Sicilian defense. Let me just close your eyes for a second. I'm going to fast forward to a classic example of a pawn storm that can be undertaken to destroy king cover. And look at this position. Open your eyes. G4, H4, H5, G5, G6. Why are you doing all this? You want to destroy the pawn cover so that when the pieces come into the attack, they do so in a more purposeful manner, right? But that's not the only motivation behind a pawn storm. And the secondary motivation, we saw that here, is to use the pawns to just trample over our opponent's pieces. Pawns are so dangerous because whenever they attack a piece, the piece must respond to it, right? Pawns are, in being, as Philidor said, they're the soul of the game. And why did he say that? Because although they're, numerically speaking, the least valuable piece, they're the piece capable of delivering the sort of most damage per move, right? Because of the way in which pieces must respond to them. Thank you, Ritz plays. So what we would do here is play g5, attack the knight. How would you continue this pawn storm? Bingo, f4. Look at what the pawns are doing. You've literally kicked away all of black's pieces. You've clamped down on the position, and you have an amazing position here. Black doesn't lose any pieces, but white is in a tremendous position here. Yeah, and you do need to be very thoughtful as to how you structure a pawn storm, because pawns can be owned by pieces sometimes. And there's concepts like blockade or counter sacrifice that can allow you to deal with a pawn storm successfully, and we'll delve into that later. But I just wanted to introduce that concept here. So takes, he decided to give up a piece for 2 pawns, which is, of course, not a good trade. And king e7 is the decisive mistake. Knight c6 keeps the game alive. Still very, very bad. King e7 check, and now knight h3. Target positions. Let's deconstruct this. Let's reverse engineer this. Well, the king is out of squares, which means that if we give the king any check, it's probably going to be made. Last question, how can black defend against this? Who can find the best way to prolong the game? Defend against knight f4 mate. Now, when you're thinking about defending against mate, another mate checklist, or should we call it a mate list, you can capture the piece that is threatening the checkmate. Not here, the knight is not capturable. You can defend the square on which the mate occurs. So the knight g6 is possible here, but now knight g5 is crushing. Or you can carve out a pathway for the king. And that is what you can do by playing f6, carving out the f7 pathway. Still completely losing. We're attacking, we're crushing. We can chase this knight away, but the game goes on for a couple more moves. Okay? Or deliver a check of your own. EST, equal or stronger threat. Yeah, knight f3 is also possible here, but the problem is you'll end up going to e5, and you're not going to survive for very much longer here. So that's the game. Now, there's a lot more to talk about here, and one of the hardest things about structuring this speedrun, given that we're talking a lot more during the game, is going to be not to like overly explain certain concepts, because I want to save stuff for when we're at a higher rating. When we're at a higher rating, I'll talk about those concepts at a higher level. So hopefully I'm doing a halfway decent job of that. These were the first 3 games of the speedrun, guys, and I have pronounced the speedrun begun. We're 578. We started at 411, so we've gained quite a bit of rating, but that's by design. We don't want to get stuck for too long on the total beginner level. So we're going to have a couple more games before we reach 900. And we're going to go probably all the way up to 2200 for the 10-minute speedrun. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm a little bit tired. It's late in the night, so I'll be a little bit higher energy for the future speedrun editions. And I always get this unsatisfied feeling like, man, I didn't talk about this. I didn't structure this correctly. I know you guys appreciate it. I appreciate it. You appreciate it. And I'll keep trying to be better. So this is part 2 of the speedrun, 10-minute speedrun. It's going to YouTube. And just to recap, we're playing aggressively with white, positionally with black. We are trying to cover some of the concepts that I didn't talk about in good enough detail in the first speedrun, as well as open up new ways of thinking and new concepts. If I'm being too repetitive, if you feel that I'm just repeating what I said in the first speedrun, please, please, please let me know about that and be direct. I'll not be offended. Thank you guys. All right, let's call it a night. 5 a.m. It is time for me to hit the sack.